And one. This is the Phil Steele Show, Week 6 edition, as we come up on the halfway marker of the college football season. Just incredible to say that out loud, gentlemen, but also very depressing. Nonetheless, with Trip Hurd, I'm Kyle Schasberger. We're joined by the Guy Fieri of College Football Magazines, the unicorn himself, that is Phil Steele. Follow him on Twitter at PhilSteele042. Thank you to those watching live at CS Now Tweets each and every Thursday throughout the year at 1 o'clock Eastern for the OGs, too, afterwards on the College Sports Now podcast feed. Phil, we've got to get to Week 6. We will. That's the point of us being here today, obviously, including 3 of the 4 games on Friday night. By the way, one game already final. That was UCF covering the number over SMU on Wednesday night. But the masses should know this magazine, it's still available on many newsstands, online at philsteele.com, to the digital version. It's never too late to get your piece of the Holy Grail, right, Phil?
Oh, that's correct. And, I want to call out the sicko pick from last week. I mean, Florida International going on the road and pulling the upset like they did. That was a phenomenal and unexpected play. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yes, FIU, the Panthers' first win against the spread. So for Sickos Nation that I represent each and every week, taking the liberties to make that selection, I am very proud. The Sickos are 4-1 this year. We will have FIU featured again this week, and yeah, it would be against mighty UConn, who got their first FBS win since 2019 this past weekend. So we'll get to that, Phil, but there's also info about Phil Steele Plus inside the press box online at philsteele.com. Interact with us at CS Now Tweets for a chance to win a free subscription of Phil Steele Plus ahead of next season, a significant tool packed with endless advanced stats that ultimately will help you be more like Phil Steele and less like Trip and I. So let's get right into it, shall we? We've got 3 of the 4 games, Phil, on Friday that we want to talk about. Sorry to Colorado State and Nevada, but we've got to make tough selections and tough cuts. We got so many games that we want to move to. So we will first head to Nebraska at Rutgers. So we go to Piscataway. The Cornhuskers are a 3-point favorite. 48.5 is the total number. 7 o'clock on Friday. Phil, Nebraska is 5-0 all-time against Rutgers. The visitor has covered, though, all 4 of those last Big Ten meetings.
Yeah, and I guess the stat that sticks out to me the biggest here, Kyle, is that Rutgers has actually lost 20 straight Big Ten home games. So the last 20 times they've been at home against the Big Ten, they've come up short. I think Nebraska started showing itself last week, 21-21 against Indiana. Then they sort of dominated the second half, pulling away with that 14-point win. Casey Thompson looked pretty good. And Anthony Grant, at running back, has run for 600 yards, 5.3 yards per carry this year. The defense with the new defensive coordinator looked better. I think Rutgers is a scrappy team, tough to go against. But I'm not going against a 20-game streak here. So I'm going to call for Nebraska to go on the road and cover this one by more than the 3 points.
Not only that, a top 50 offense in Nebraska going up against a bottom 25 offense. So, yeah, I like Nebraska there in the streak. Trip, take us to Memphis, will you?
Yeah, let's go on to game 2 Friday night. We've got Houston at Memphis. Memphis favored by 2.5 right now. I tried to warn you guys on Houston last week. I teed it up. I thought Tulane was going to give them a game. That went my way. Memphis was part of the teaser. They covered their end, but they didn't score in the first half against Temple. I don't really trust either one of these teams right now. I do know that Houston, every game they play goes to overtime, so I've got my $2 overtime bet in that's going to pay off $18. What do you see here in this one, Phil?
Well, I think anytime Memphis is at home, you have to like them. They've got a great spread record, or not spread record, but great record at home. Now, Silverfield is a home favorite, not so much. They win the games, but they don't win by enough margin. But in this one, they don't have to win by very much. They're only about a 3-point favorite in the game. Plus, Memphis has won 5 of the last 6 in this one, and they're 5-1 against the spread. So I think the fact that it's in the Liberty Bowl is a big plus for Memphis. Seth Hennigan's got a 9-1 ratio this year, so he's throwing the football well. You look at Houston, sort of an underachieving team almost on a weekly basis. And as you touched on, a lot of close games. Even last week, they had a 22-14 first down edge, 383 to 273 yard edge, Tulane's down to their third string quarterback. How do you lose that game? But they did. So I'm going to have to lean with Memphis at home in the Liberty Bowl. And once again, if Memphis was a big favorite here, I'd lean with the dog because they're just not covering big spreads at home. But the line's only 3. I'll take the Memphis Tigers.
If it were me, I would stay away from this simply because the teams seem so equally matched, though, statistically. And in offense, Memphis is 72nd nationally, total offense 79th for Houston, then defense 91st and 96th, Memphis and Houston respectfully. But Dana Holgorsen, that factor, Phil, if you will, when you're a viewer and you're watching a game and you see a guy like Dana blow his gasket each and every single week, as you have seen, I think the average football fan or the casual person might say, has that guy lost his team? Like, how might that affect the sharps, the bettors? What side maybe the public might be vying towards or leaning towards each and every week? Because I would have to think, especially for a lot of casual football fans who visually are seeing Houston featured on a Friday night a week ago, just completely unravel at the seams against Tulane, and now they're in a Friday night spot again. I think that's a bad taste in a lot of bettors' mouth to go against Houston now this week.
Yeah, it probably had a little something to do with me liking Memphis this week. Now, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors at Houston. I can't tell you he's lost the team or anything like that. The comments a couple of weeks ago, maybe he's just trying to get the players to be players. But it wasn't a good look last week.
We'll move to San Jose State. Mountain West matchup, UNLV, who is 4-1, taking on a 3-1 San Jose State team. Phil, I must admit, this 10:30 kickoff, the Rebels, this line started, I believe UNLV was favored by 1.5. Yes, they opened up as a 1.5 favorite. This has completely swung the way of San Jose State. They're now giving 6.5 points, but to see San Jose State even at 3-1, I had no idea. So these are two teams combined at 7-2 for the year, a pivotal Mountain West showdown. And Marcus Arroyo, his stock is up with what he's doing. A team that was 2-10 a year ago at UNLV, and now all of a sudden 4-1 atop the West Division in the Mountain West. This should be a fun one tonight at 10:30.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, you take a look at UNLV. They have been very good all season. California is a game where they actually had down 6. They had 3 possessions with the ball at the end of the game, just couldn't score. Then beat North Texas, Utah State, New Mexico. Granted, very light schedule there, but they're taking care of business. And the big difference this year is Doug Brumfield. He's got an 8-2 ratio. He's hitting 71% of his passes. Aiden Robbins has been a surprise running back for him. They lost their top running back last year when Charles Williams transferred, but Aiden Robbins has stepped in and rushed for 506 yards, 4.9 yards per carry. But I've been a little more impressed with San Jose. They gave Auburn a great game on the road in Jordan-Hare Stadium, then dominated Western Michigan to the tune of 34-5 the next week. And last week, Wyoming's a tough place to go in and win. Wyoming's not very good on the road, but they're very good at home. And San Jose State just went out there and dominated the game with a 456, 253-yard edge. They've got one of the best defensive lines out there in the Mountain West. Might have the best defense in Mountain West overall, holding opponents to 64 yards per game below their season average. And Chevin Cadero, the Hawaii quarterback, not taking a lot of chances, but 0 interceptions to go along with his 4 touchdown passes. So I'm going to lean with San Jose at home, but should be a great game, as you mentioned.
Home team in that series is 5-1 straight up and against the spread over the last 6 games. Phil, I want to jump to Baton Rouge. Let's go to SEC country as we move to Saturday. And feel free at any point if you want to share your screen and show us Phil Steele Plus. So once some of the viewers and listeners can get their hands all over in terms of the advanced stats, the player stats, the year-by-year results, all of the leaders, the draft histories, be more like Phil Steele. Again, bet smarter, not harder. If Phil shares his screen at any point today, for those of you watching live at CS Now Tweets, YouTube, the Varsity Network channel, or Learfield Audio page on Facebook, you will have that luxury and at least that leg up as you make your selections each and every week. So, Phil, Tennessee at LSU, everybody wants to latch on to the fact that this is an 11 o'clock Central Time kick, and I get that. I lived down in Baton Rouge for a couple of years. I've been to more than a handful of games. I don't think I ever went to an 11 o'clock Central kick, so that tells you how rare that is. Whether I made it inside the stadium, went to just tailgate, or what have you, I don't even remember an 11 o'clock Central kick in 2 years of living down there. Nonetheless, I think LSU is going to be ready in this spot because they're a home dog where they seem to thrive. 4-0-1 over their last 5. Tennessee is coming in. It seems like TV networks want to dictate that undefeated Volunteer Crimson Tide matchup a week from now, and I think LSU is going to have some news for them as the Tennessee Volunteers enter as a 3-point favorite. 64.5 is the total. Again, 12 Eastern on ESPN.
Yeah, I'd prefer Tennessee if they were the dog, but I still lean with the Vols to come out of here with the win. I think when you look at them this year, they're tested. They played Pitt on the road, Florida at home. Remember the Florida game? They led that thing by about 17 points, and then Florida got a couple of late scores to make it 38-33. Explosive offense led by Hendon Hooker. He's got an 8-0 ratio, and they're averaging 49 points per game. When you look at LSU, remember they trailed Florida State by 14 in the fourth quarter. They trailed Mississippi State 13-0 and then 13-7 in the fourth quarter. And last week, they were on the verge of getting blown out of Jordan-Hare down 17-0. They got the fumble return for a touchdown, sort of changed the game around. But Auburn actually had a 438 to 270-yard edge on them. So I haven't been blown away with LSU. I think they're a team that's sort of fortunate to be 4-1 at this point. I have liked what I've seen out of Tennessee. It's tough to go against LSU as a home dog. I'm going to give a slight lean to Tennessee here, but I'm probably not going to play this one.
Yeah, I'm on Tennessee too. It's a tough call. LSU, I think their quarterback's a little banged up too. He's left the last 2 games, I think. But Brian Kelly says he's okay. But we know head coaches are massive liars, and I think I'm going to lean with Tennessee minus the 3 as well on that one. But let's stay in the SEC and jump over to Arkansas at Mississippi State. Arkansas basically got blown out twice last weekend against Bama. I think they got in a big hole. They came back. They gave up a couple of late touchdowns, and Bama got the cover there. Mississippi State, this line opened at 6. It's up to 9.5 right now. What do you like in this one, Phil?
Yeah, and the reason the number's climbing is KJ Jefferson is in concussion protocol, and you wonder if he's going to be able to play in this game. And if you take away KJ Jefferson, I mean, Cade Fortin wasn't overwhelming against Bama when he came in. He's 0-4 as a starting quarterback. You wonder a little bit about how Arkansas is going to be. I think KJ Jefferson's having a great season this year. With Mississippi State, they've got that high-flying pass offense going against an Arkansas pass defense that's been beat up a little bit this year. Gave up over 325 yards to Cincinnati, South Carolina, and Missouri State. Tightened it up a little bit the last 2 weeks, but still can get beat with the deep ball. Now, I'll say this. If KJ Jefferson was healthy, I might like Arkansas for a possible upset here. And if he does play, I think they do have a possible upset. So I'm leaning with Arkansas plus the points, but it does concern me if KJ Jefferson doesn't show up, because Mississippi State has played well and played a pretty good Texas A&M team last week and beat them by 18.
Mike Leach 0-2 against Arkansas all time, getting outgained by 193 and 125 in each of those last 2 games. Home team 2-7 against spread. Hawks trying to avoid a 3 straight loss after rising to number 10 in the polls. Arkansas, Mississippi State, 12 o'clock SEC Network. 4th-ranked Michigan at Indiana. Another big one for the Wolverines is they're favored by 23.5. 58.5 is the total. 12 o'clock on Fox. Phil, Indiana 2-9 against the spread in Big Ten play since the start of last year, and 0-6 ATS straight up against ranked teams. Got to be all over the Wolverines here.
Yeah, except for the situation. I mean, last week was a big game for Michigan, going into Iowa, Kinnick Stadium, the place where top 5 teams die. And next week they've got Penn State at home. Follow that with Michigan State, their rival, who they own a little revenge to. So it's definitely a flat spot, I think, for Michigan. 2nd straight road game. And for Indiana, you got to think they're going to give 100,000% in this game. It's their chance to right their season. And keep in mind, while they're 3-2, it's been a very unimpressive 3-2. You're looking at a road or a home win against Illinois, where they won by 3. They barely got past Idaho, Western Kentucky. Sort of fortunate in 2 of those games they were outgained. But I think you're going to see Indiana play their A game here. I think you're going to see Michigan play their C game here. And that has me leaning a little bit with Indiana plus the 23.5. I still think Michigan wins, probably by 17-21. And it would be a little scary going against that potent Michigan offense with Blake Corum running wild. I mean, he's got 611 yards, 6.6 yards per carry. J.J. McCarty could have a big day, but the flat spot has me leaning a little bit with the home dog.
Well, you're scaring me a little bit because I've already put a bet in for Michigan to cover the first quarter line. I've got 6.5. I just think they want to jump out and get this thing, put to bed quick. That way they can turn their attention to Penn State next week. But
Makes
I
sense.
don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think next up we've got the Red River Shootout rivalry, whatever you want to call it. Showdown. Okay, fair enough. It's the first time these teams, I think I read this, first time they've met since 1998, where neither team is ranked in the top 25. But I'm not sure which way I want to lean here. I do have a little prop bet for a defensive special teams touchdown, just because I think there's a lot up in the air with the quarterbacks. What do you see happening here, Phil?
Yeah, and this is a game where traditionally, I think if you take a look at the last 10, 15 years, I just automatically take Texas as a dog in this game. And there's been a lot of years where it looks like Oklahoma's unstoppable. Texas doesn't look very good. And yet the dog not only plays well, but takes it right down to the wire. And now I think that's in Oklahoma's favor for this week. Oklahoma looked horrible last week against TCU. Couldn't stop anything. TCU put up 55 points. They didn't look great against Kansas State the week before, losing outright at home. Dylan Gabriel got banged up, which isn't a good sign for him here. And Texas, meanwhile, rolled over West Virginia. So if you look at last week's results, you got to play Texas, right? But I think the underdog dominates this series, mostly Texas. And I think Oklahoma's going to thrive in the underdog role here. So I do like Texas to win the game, but I got to take the underdog, especially with the line at 7. Anything over 7, I've always been heavy on Texas in the last couple of years. So I like the underdog in this rivalry game.
Texas has only won 3 times since 2010. And Tripp, you're right. It's the 6th time in 80 years overall where these two teams have met, with neither one of them being ranked. And as Phil's magazine astutely points out, here's the Texas team page, which, by the way, if you're a subscriber to Phil Steele Plus, $100 value, one of you lucky viewers, listeners will get one of these. Interact with us at CS Now Tweets. We'll dish that out at the end of the season. You'll get these updated each and every week, the team pages with Phil Steele Plus. But there's a note in there about Texas not being favored, Phil, since 2009. So it's been 13 years for the Longhorns. So they find themselves in an unfamiliar position, giving 7, 65.5 the total. Again, 12 o'clock on ABC, and unranked Texas, unranked Oklahoma. A lot of that depends on Quinn Ewers, though, which we don't know about his status. Will be him or Hudson Card under center. Haven't heard anything about Dylan Gabriel as well. So this might be a couple of backup quarterbacks, if you will. Could be a game you might be better served live betting in that case also. TCU and Kansas. The booth is sold out for the 3rd straight game, Phil. What kind of alternate universe are we living in where Texas and Oklahoma are unranked? Oklahoma is on the verge of losing a 3rd straight game for the first time since 1998. And we've got 2 of the Big 12's best, what everybody thought it would be coming in, right? TCU and Kansas. These two teams have combined 9-0, and College Game Day, yes, finally has had the wherewithal to make the proper decision to bring College Game Day to Lawrence, Kansas. So we've got TCU favored big in this one. 68.5 is the total. I'm seeing 6.5. I'm trying to see if there's been some adjustment. No, TCU is given 6.5 points. So Kansas, a home underdog. That'll be a 12 o'clock kick, FS1 on Saturday, Phil.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the game on paper, TCU is the better team. I was very impressed with what they did last week against Oklahoma, putting on 55 points, 42 against Smooth the week before that. And Kansas has played a somewhat softer schedule. And last week, Kansas was outgained 313 to 213 by Iowa State. Out first down 20-10. Somehow came out with a 3-point win with Iowa State, missing 3 field goals. So really, the more talented team is TCU. Max Duggan has looked great. He's got an 11-0 ratio this year. He's hitting 75%, and he, of course, is a dangerous runner. But I got to tell you, Jalen Daniels is a guy that's just amazing. He took over the last 3 games last year. They'd upset Texas, almost upset TCU, almost upset West Virginia. A perfect 3-0 against the spread. And how about this year? 5-0 straight up, but 5-0 against the spread. Now, a little worrisome for me is Kansas with all this spotlight on them. Usually when a team has not been in the AP top 25 for a long time and they enter that top 25, they're out the next week. And you got game day on hand. But I'm not going against this spread streak. Jalen Daniels, 8-0 against the spread as a starting quarterback. And how do you go against the Kansas Jayhawks? I'm going to take Kansas plus the points at home in this one.
Yeah, I am too. I'm playing the. I'm a blackjack guy myself, so I'm going to play the streak. I'll take Kansas in the points, and I also like the over in this game. I know Kansas had to do it on defense last week, but I think this is going to turn into a shootout. So why not just take the over and enjoy it?
There you go.
Kansas only one of 5 teams remaining, Phil. You had the number 5-0 against the spread. Only 5 FBS teams are perfect at 5-0 against the spread this year. And as you say, you go with the streak because you only lose once. I'm going to apply that logic, Phil, to our next game. And this is a peak of one of my top plays, and that's going to be Auburn. Give me all 30 of those points at Georgia. The Dogs have lost against the spread now consecutive games. They're also 0 for their last 5 ATS at home. And because of that alone, and all of the fire, all the vitriol being spewed in the direction of Brian Harsin and Auburn over the last couple of weeks, who I don't believe have played that poorly. Sure, they're not going to meet or exceed the expectations of the Auburn fan base. I mean, my guy, Gus Malzahn couldn't even do that. I don't think anybody can on this planet unless your name is Hugh Freeze, but that remains to be seen. But still, they've played stretches, Auburn has. I think somehow, some way, they're going to be able to put it together. I'm not calling for an outright upset. I'm just calling to keep this within 3 touchdowns and certainly under the 30 on Saturday. So this game is the CBS part 1 of 2. It's the doubleheader. It's 3:30. It's Georgia and Auburn, the Deep South's oldest rivalry, being renewed for 126th time. Again, Georgia struggled 26-22, winning at Missouri, coming from behind last weekend. 3:30 game, Phil.
Yeah, and I think when you take a look, the beautiful thing about Phil Steele Plus, you can go back. It says last 40 plus years. It's actually plus 46 years are back there, all the way back to 1976. And if you look, the previous high spread in this game that Georgia's been favored by over Auburn in that span is 15.5 points. And now they're double that at 30 points in this game. And as you touched on, Kyle, Kirby Smart does not do well as a home favorite. I mean, look at this. They played Samford and only beat them 33-0. They played Kent State and only beat them by 17. Kirby is now 13-22 against the spread as a home favorite. Now, Todd will get this corrected, but last week it was a 438 to 270-something yard edge that they had against LSU. They had a 20 better than the 20-19 first downs in that game. They played well. They led that thing 17-0. The fumble return touchdown hurt them. I thought they played Penn State well. If you look here, we give you half times on every game. They had a 242, 207 yard edge against Penn State. The game snowballed in the second half. So always look at your half times because that really tells you how the game was played. I thought Robbie Ashford was very impressive last week, throwing for 337 yards. And Kentucky, they're great as an away favorite, although not last week. They almost lost to Missouri, but very poor as a home favorite. So 30 seems to be way too much in this one. I like the Tigers in this plus the points.
Man, Kyle, I'm really disappointed in you right now. An hour ago when we walked in this studio, he called for the outright upset.
Wow.
Know he did. He wanted Auburn money line, and now he's backing off of it. But hey, I kind of
30 points. That is a lot, man.
What is the Auburn money line, Kyle?
Oh man, I had it up here.
I actually just looked. I didn't see a money line on my site for.
I did
reason.
tell Tripp just as much. I said, "Look, we're gonna money line this up because why not?"
Yeah, put a small wager on it. What the heck? It's a rivalry game.
But I do like the over in this game because I think if Georgia, like they've, had 2 scares in a row, if they can kind of get it back going a little bit on offense, and maybe if we get a little bit of that magic from Schasberger here and Auburn can keep it close, I like the over. It's only 49.5. And, yeah, I'm already locked in on that. Plus 2 big defensive guys are not playing. Jalen Carter is out, I think, and Leota is out for Auburn.
So Auburn opened up at plus 450 on the money line. It has ballooned.
I can't believe 450 at a 30-point spread.
It has ballooned to plus 2,200.
Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah.
Yes.
That 450 is a typo, I think.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, because it had. I'm looking at the Action Network, so we'll push them to the side for now. But yes, plus 2,200 according to to Caesars at this point for Auburn.
Okay, I can handle that.
Yeah, that is redonkulous. But I told Tripp the reason being is because this kind of gives me some Alabama Texas A&M vibes from a year ago, and we all know how that concluded with the Tide losing in College Station. It was that one game that nobody was paying any attention to, and this is how college football works, the randomness of it. And what happened? Jimbo and Texas A&M took down Alabama. So upon further review, Tripp, 30 points is too much for the money line. Maybe I'll put $5 on it. We'll see. But yeah, that number is just absurd. But don't be surprised if Auburn's hanging around in the fourth quarter. And certainly those that took Auburn and took our advice here today will be feeling themselves quite a bit. To the Rose Bowl, Pasadena. Utah has made this their home away from home, it seems. Of late, the 11th ranked Utes are given 3.5 at UCLA. The Bruins are perfect. They're 5-0. And 64.5 is the total. 3:30 game on Fox. Utah has dominated this series of late, winning the last 5 straight up and against the spread, Phil.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Utah traveled here last year for the Rose Bowl and brought quite a crowd with them. They actually, Ohio State always has a crowd advantage in a bowl game. You know that. Their fans travel great. Utah might have had a slight crowd edge over Ohio State last year. Now, there won't be that many traveling, but they probably bring 10 to 15,000, and I think they'll sound just as loud as the UCLA fans. So that sort of negates the home field edge that UCLA would normally get in a game like this. Now, you mentioned the series history. On philsteele.com, you just click on the opponent here, and you can see right here the color coding. If it's red, that means the team lost the game. UCLA has lost the last 5 in the series straight up, and if this is red, that means they did not cover the game. They have lost the last 5 in a row against the spread. So Utah is 5-0 straight up and against the spread. If you look at the way that Utah has played over the last 4 weeks, look down here. This tells you your average game grade of the last 4 weeks. Utah's playing at a level of 115.0. And this has nothing to do with Utah. It has everything to do with their opponent and what you do on the field. The score and the yards of what you do on the field. They're playing to a 115.0 level since that loss to Florida. Meanwhile, UCLA is just playing at a 98.9 level over the last 4 weeks. So if you take a look at how they're playing in the last 4 weeks, that would easily say Utah by a couple of touchdowns. And so I think with the crowd negated, very little home edge, I like Utah minus the 3.5 in this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think it's going to be one of the best games of the weekend. I'm kind of excited to watch this, but UCLA has convinced me, and I just think this is their year. The way the schedule lines up, I know we've talked about it on a couple of other episodes. It's a doable schedule, and some of these games, these are the humps they're going to have to get over. But I'm actually going to take UCLA on the money line and see if Chip Kelly can pull this one through for me. I've also got another. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
They led Washington by 40-16 last week, gave up a couple of late scores, and if they win this game, you have to put UCLA as a favorite to get to the Pac-12 title game. I liked Washington last week. The UCLA did better than I expected. We'll see if they top it this week.
By the way, that money line, that Auburn-Georgia line actually had opened up at plus 15. So that thing's grown almost 2 touchdowns. It's amazing the line movement in some of these games that we'll see week to week, which, again, just speaks to the Auburn plus 2,200. But money line option for a trip there, you like it?
Yeah, I do. I like UCLA. We'll see what happens. I had to go to bed early because I'm an old man on Friday, so I only saw the first half. I was surprised to see how close it got. Well, I shouldn't say surprised, but after the way they dominated early, I was kind of surprised to see Washington crawl back in it and make it close. But anyways, let's jump over to the Big 12. We've got Texas Tech on the road at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys 4-0. They're coming off a big win over Baylor. I don't know. This one's kind of stinky to me. I like, for whatever reason, I would think Oklahoma State would be favored by a little bit more, which kind of makes me like Texas Tech plus the points here. What do you see on this one, Phil?
In this one, I do like Oklahoma State. First of all, they're a spread darling. They've been covering. They're 13-3 against the spread their last 16 games. Mike Gundy's 49-32 as a home favorite, so he always does well there. It's a big home crowd. And then the one factor I'm going to take a look at, and the beautiful thing about the Phil Steele Plus, let's click on the 2001 individual player stats for Texas Tech. And we could see Donovan Smith was not the starting quarterback last year. You see, he's got right all the way down here. Donovan Smith had a decent game against Oklahoma. Then he had a really good game against Iowa State. He had 25 of 32 for 322 yards and a 3-1 ratio. Then they play Oklahoma State. Ouch. 9 of 29 for 83 yards last year. So he struggled against that Oklahoma State defense last year at home. Now has to play him on the road. And, of course, last year, this 0 was the first time Texas Tech had been shut out in 300-some-odd games. So it was a game where they had 108 yards offense. You can see that in red here. Gave up 427 yards, and that was in Lubbock. Now, this year the game is in Stillwater, where Oklahoma State plays a lot better. Last year, they won their home games by an average of 37-18, as you can see down here by the home average. So add it all up, I do like Oklahoma State. I see the line is a little cheap for me, Trip, but that just makes it all the better value to play Oklahoma State.
We're going to skip USC and Washington State. If you want more top 25 games that we didn't cover, remember, Phil Steele was on this very same podcast feed, College Sports Now. Just slide back one episode with Wayne Cook, Stephen Hartzell, each and every Wednesday. That one drops. Roddy Jones is on earlier in the week, and then Michael Felder as well later with Michael Serber and Trip Hurd also producing. So we got to talk about Alabama and Texas A&M, though, because of the soap opera that it became since May, right? And now it's kind of lost a lot of that luster because there's, well, more pressing issues at hand in College Station. And for Alabama, who's going to be under center at quarterback? Will it be Jalen Monroe? Will it be Bryce Young? Does it matter? 8 o'clock CBS. This is game 2 of the CBS doubleheader. The Aggies are catching 23.5, 51.5 is the total here. Remember, the Aggies are the one team to beat Alabama during the regular season a year ago.
Yeah, it's a good situation for Alabama at home, playing with revenge, rare revenge. I mean, how often does Alabama actually get a revenge game? They win so many games. And Texas A&M's offense has been struggling. And, Canes King, Max Johnson, who's going to be a quarterback. The offense is putting up 83 yards below what opponents normally allow, and Alabama's allowing just 236 yards. You put those two numbers together, and A&M gets about 150 here. So I would lean with Alabama. We'll see if Bryce Young plays. I would like Alabama if Bryce Young definitely plays, is 100%. But if not, I'd probably lean with Alabama.
What's going on with A&M this year? I mean, they're so loaded with talent. I just don't understand how they can kind of fall this far.
That's why it doesn't matter who's at quarterback for Alabama this weekend. It really doesn't.
Well, Milroe is not an accomplished downfield passer yet. I have to see how he reads a defense. We know he can run the football. So we'll see what happens there. And with A&M, I think it goes to my experience chart that I have in the magazine. While Texas A&M has a ton of talent, they are one of the least experienced teams in the country. That'll change next year. They'll be one of the most experienced teams, but they are a very young team right now.
All right. Well, on to the real best team in the country. We've got Florida State going on the road to Raleigh at 14th ranked NC State. NC State is favored by a field goal here. And I'll tell you what, I've been to a few of these games. I've actually been to 2 FSU games when they're playing in Raleigh. They've won both of them. But outside of that, the Carter Finley Stadium hasn't been very kind to FSU. So I would probably lean NC State here. What do you think on this one, Phil?
Yeah, and I definitely like NC State in this one. I think when you look at it, last week NC State was in a tough situation. They're playing Clemson on the road in Death Valley. Clemson's playing with legitimate revenge, rare revenge, as we mentioned. And that game was, while NC State got a late score to make it 30-20, it was actually closer than that. In the fourth quarter, it was 20-13. So I thought NC State's defense held up well and played a good game under adverse conditions. Now they're back at home, off a loss, and Carter Finley Stadium, as you mentioned, has been tough for Florida State all the way days back to when Chuck Amato came from Florida State to go to NC State and seemed to have the magic over Florida State each and every year. And Florida State was at home last week against Wake Forest in a big game and came up short. Wake Forest got out to a big lead, and then Florida State battled back. I do think statistically, Florida State's right up there. My computer will tell you it likes Florida State, but it also told me I like Florida State over Wake last week. I like NC State -3 over Florida State in this one.
Yeah, both teams coming off of a loss. That'll be the feature of our college football Saturday night game with Sloan Martin and Mike Golick Jr. 8 o'clock across more than 130 radio stations terrestrially, Sirius XM, and download the Varsity Network app if you haven't already. You can catch coaches shows from all of our schools, all of our partners, of course, the play-by-play broadcasts for your favorite team, the Varsity Network app. Okay, let's go to some of the more obscure games, right? More of the cryptic games, as we've covered a lot of those ranked ones, as we've got maybe 10 minutes or so left with Phil, so we'll try to rattle through as many of these as we can. And we'll head to Big Ten country for Purdue as a 3-point underdog on the road at Maryland, 12 o'clock. Big Ten Network, 59 is the total. Each of these teams coming off a win for the Boilermakers and Jeff Bromfield. Very impressive going to Minnesota and dealing the Golden Gophers their first defeat a week ago.
Yeah, very impressed with Purdue. And, you look at Purdue's season this year, late touchdown pass by Penn State. They lose by 4. Last second touchdown pass by Syracuse. They lose by 3. They're 2 plays away from being 5-0 this year and probably in the top 10 with those opponents that they've played. Heck, Minnesota was getting up there close last week. But also Maryland's been very impressive all season. You go back to the Michigan game, take away that fumbled kickoff on the opening start of that game, and they were even with Michigan, and that was in the big house. Now they get this one at home. I find it tough to go against Purdue as an underdog. I did like Minnesota last week, and Purdue did go in there and beat them as a dog. But I'm also impressed with Maryland at home. So I'm going to stay away from this one. If I had to pick the game, I'd lean a little bit with Maryland.
Georgia Southern and Georgia State. The Panthers favored by 2.5 at home. They call this one modern day hate. This is a massive rivalry between these two schools. Georgia State finally collected their first win on the year after starting 0-4. They beat Army, which, trust me, Phil, that's not saying much this year. But I think we all believe Georgia State has it in them. They've got Georgia Southern coming in that lost a heartbreaker, an absolute gut-wrenching one on the road at Coastal Carolina. By the way, one of, just 2 remaining group of 5 teams? I think it's just Coastal and James Madison at this point. So Georgia State, though, has won 5 of 7 in this rivalry, but they're 0-3 at home this year. After 3 straight winning seasons at home, they'll need to win this to at least be in the running for that again this year.
Yeah, and I love the name of the rivalry. That's outstanding. I love the rivalry itself. But I've also, I thought last week Georgia State was definitely the best 0-4 team in the country. I mean, you're talking about a South Carolina game where they give up a couple of block punts for touchdowns. North Carolina, they took to the wire. I thought they played a good game against Coastal. And Charlotte, they were surprised by Reynolds coming back in the lineup. But last week they jump out to that 17-0 lead and then roll over them 31-14. They're at home. They're in a desperate situation. And as good as Georgia Southern's been, the better schedule has been to Georgia State. So I think Georgia State's in a must-win situation at home. They can't afford a 5th loss, especially with App State, Southern Miss, and James Madison all on the road. And the line's less than 3. So if you're laying less than a field goal here, I like Georgia State minus the points at home.
All right, let's jump over to the American. ECU is going on the road to probably my second favorite team this year, Tulane. They've been really good to me. I had Tulane when they were on the road at Kansas State. I think they were getting 14. I thought it was a fishy line. And then they came through again on Friday night against Houston with a third-string quarterback. Looks like ECU's getting 3.5 on the road. My eye test tells me ECU is actually the better team, but as you can see with my Coke bottle glasses, my eyes ain't that good. What do you think here, Phil?
Well, if Tulane makes you warm and fuzzy, I got to tell you, East Carolina makes me warm and fuzzy. They're on 11-2 against the spread run. I have used them in my newsletter Inside the Press Box as a key selection, probably 12 of those 13 times. And so I'm 11-1 using East Carolina. Remember this game at the start of the season? We talked about NC State earlier. East Carolina should have beaten NC State at home. They missed an extra point, which would have tied it. They missed the game-winning field goal at the end, a chip shot field goal at that. Outgained NC State, outplayed NC State, just came up short on the scoreboard. And the Navy option was just something that did them in. And it's actually been those 2 spread losses that they've had have both been against the Navy option. But this is an East Carolina team that can run or pass. They've got the running backs with Mitchell and Harris. They've got the quarterback with Ehlers. They have an outstanding defense as well. I'll take East Carolina as a dog any day of the week. I like the Pirates plus the points here.
All right. I've also got the over circled on my sheet here. Do you like the over under? I haven't put it in yet. You can talk me out of it.
Well, Michael Pratt should be back for Tulane, so you got to think if they could put up 27 with the third string quarterback against Houston last week, they should be able to score. And I think East Carolina can score on everybody except for Navy, that is.
All right, let's jump over to the most exciting conference in college football, the Big Ten. We've got Wisconsin -10 at Northwestern. Over under is 44, so it's going to go under. We know that. Is there anything you want to add here, Kyle?
5 of the nation's top 10 in total defense all come from the Big Ten. Probably not a shock, but Tulane is right there as well. To go back to your previous game, they're there as the 9th-rated defense. But no, for these two teams, Phil, it's all about Paul Chryst, right? What happened over the weekend? Again, the obituary is written again, not just for Paul Chryst, but for Carl Durrell at Colorado. But I just cannot believe it was an absolute stunner that Chryst was cut off at the knees as quickly as he was for a guy that is Wisconsin, went to Wisconsin. His father coached and played for Wisconsin. I mean, he represents Wisconsin in every purest sense of the imagination and reality. He won 72% of his games. And for him to tumble after a 52-16 start over the last couple of years to just go to 15-10 and come out of the gates 2-3 and not be given the benefit of the doubt and just promote Jim Leonard? I don't know. There's more going on there. So I am curious. I think we're going to learn a lot at Northwestern, Phil. Tell me if you agree about what this Badger team is made of. This is one of those classic spots. Interim coach promoted, but it seems like the administration and the AD McIntosh want to give Leonard the opportunity. Hey, give us a reason to not make you full-time at the end of the year, and this is the first step.
Yeah, and I think he hit it right on the head. And I have no information. I'm just speculating here, but I think with Jim Leonard being a big star now everybody wants Jim Leonard. The Green Bay Packers want him as the defense coordinator, offered him the job this year. Probably the new AD had a discussion like, who do we want as our coach long term? Maybe we want Jim Leonard. And then what do we do at the end of the year if we win the West? Can we make the move then? Can we want to hold on to Jim Leonard? So I think the 2-3 start, the poor game against Illinois, and the fact the offense, which is Paul Chryst's specialty, has been struggling, all help them make that move now so they don't have to make the move later. So I just think they fell in love with Jim Leonard and wanted him as the head coach. And I do think that Wisconsin, which in my mind has only played one decent game all year. I mean, the Washington State game, they underperformed. Illinois State, they needed 2 big plays. Ohio State, they got blown out. And Illinois just dominated them. But they're too good of a team not to get this win on the road. Now Northwestern's not chopped liver. I'll point this out. They opened up 1-3, but they outgained each of their first 4 opponents. And last week took Penn State to the wire. So I think Northwestern's a quality team. I just think if you look at the rest of Wisconsin's schedule, they actually do not play a ranked team the rest of the year. So there's a chance if they play to Wisconsin's potential that they could run the table, go 7-0 down the stretch, and actually be the Big Ten West champ, because the Big Ten West champ is going to have 2 losses or more this year. So keep your eyes on Wisconsin. I think this is the week they show who they are.
Yeah, since the COVID year, 9-8 has been Paul Chryst and Wisconsin. That's after winning 3 Big Ten West titles, 3 New Year's Six bowl games, including a huge blowout in the Pinstripe Bowl over Miami, where Paul Chryst famously asked what effing turnover chain. Very colorful guy, very fun, Paul Chryst, when he's in front of the media and also not in front of the media. But yeah, Illinois winning in Madison for the first time in 20 years seemed to be the guillotine that would ultimately fall on his neck and start the Jim Leonard era for now. So, Tripp, did you have anything to add on the Cats and Badgers out in Evanston? This game is going to start at 3:30, Big Ten Network showdown. Wisconsin favored by 10, 44 the over-under.
Nope, just a good old underlock. That's it.
Duke at Georgia Tech. Let's move to the flats, shall we? Where Brent Key has the Yellow Jackets playing inspired, Phil. I didn't have that on my bingo board, the Yellow Jackets getting a win at Pittsburgh a week ago, but they did. Interim coach, first game, Jeff Collins is out. Key comes in, he gets the game ball, and Georgia Tech is able to get maybe the best win of the Jeff Collins era without him even being there. So now they've got to host Duke. Blue Devils come in as 3.5-point favorites, 54.5 the total, 4 o'clock on ESPN.
Love the way Duke's been playing. Very impressive last week. Blew Virginia out by 21. Riley Leonard's got a 7-2 ratio. He's at 72% of his passes. But Brent Key had them going, Georgia Tech. And remember 2 weeks ago when they played UCF, we saw UCF last night dominate SMU. Georgia Tech had a 452 to 333 yard edge at UCF 2 weeks ago. So they actually played better than the final score would indicate there. They played good against Pitt, and they can actually win this game here at home. So I would lean with the home dog in this one. I know Duke's been a great story and a great team all year. Love what they did at Northwestern earlier, but I'm only with Georgia Tech plus the points in this one.
All right, we can't leave off the rematch of the Conference USA title game last year. Western Kentucky on the road getting 6.5 points at UTSA. I think every game UTSA's played all season, I think they're 5-0 on overs so far. So I'm taking the over, even though it's 72.5, and nobody's going to change my mind. But what do you see in this game?
I knew you'd be on the over in this one. I mean, if you watch last year's game, 49-41, that was 90 points. And I think Frank Harris is a better quarterback this year than he was last year. 12-5 ratio, he's hitting 69%. Really a great leader of the offense. And they finally got the run game going. First couple games of the year, they were still trying to figure out who's going to replace Sincere McCormick. But Brendan Brady's come on, and he had 98 yards against Middle Tennessee State in the last game. I think adding the run game to that, but you hit it right on the head. I mean, they're allowing opponents 35 yards per game above their season average. And for Western, Austin Reed's playing well. He's got a 17-4 ratio. He is not Bailey Zappi, but he's pretty close. So I do like the over in this game. I also like the fact that UTSA's home crowd is getting better every week. Last year, and is one of the better home crowd edges that you have. They're at home for this one, laying less than a touchdown. So I like the over, and I like UTSA minus the points.
Roadrunners have gone over in each of their last 5 games. In fact, these two teams, the last 2 times they've met, including the Conference USA title game a year ago, those 2 meetings, though, have combined to average 1,179 yards and 94 points per game. So, yeah, points will be plenty between those two. 72.5 is the total. Western Kentucky getting 6.5, 6 o'clock on ESPN+. All right, very quickly, before we get to your top 3 plays, Phil, too, we got a Sickos pick before we get out of here. I've got to touch on Notre Dame because I'm wearing the shirt. Every time I'm wearing a school-specific piece of apparel, memorabilia, whatever it may be, I've got to sign with that school. So I'm giving an early tease on where I'm going with my top plays. But Notre Dame is given 3.5, 50.5 is the total, 7:30 NBC and Peacock. Neutral site venue. This is the Shamrock Series game between Notre Dame and 16th-ranked BYU. So the Cougars are underdogs. These two are playing for the first time since, I think it was 2013. So it's been almost 10 years for these two. This was the Shamrock Series on-field polo that Brian Kelly wore. He wore it. He gave it to me.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding. No, I bought it off his back through Fanatics. But, yes, this is the one he wore. I look forward to seeing what Marcus Freeman is going to be wearing on Saturday night when the Irish cover the 3.5.
Well, there you go. And to me, this game's a toss-up, so I'll go with you on this one, Kyle. I think BYU, normally in the Shamrock Series, Notre Dame's going to have the crowd edge. I think BYU has the crowd edge with this game being played in Vegas. It's a very short trip for BYU. They're going to have a good amount of fans there. So BYU is slight crowd edge, but I had rated the game a toss-up. I leaned with Notre Dame winning the game. So I'll go with you then on this one, Kyle, and go with Notre Dame.
Allegiant Stadium, home of the Raiders, 7:30. Will be a neutral sign. Shamrock Series game. Notre Dame BYU. First time Notre Dame's playing Independence since Army in 2016. So those two iconic, the last remaining, or the most iconic, I guess, independent programs getting together. BYU, of course, in their last year of their independence. Iowa and Illinois. And then we'll get to your top 3 plays, Phil. Iowa's won 13 of 14 against the Illini overall, including 8 straight. Illini are third. It's a different Illinois team, though, this year, boy. Brett Bielema, year 2, has this Illinois team as the 3rd best defense in the country in front of Iowa, who is 7th. Both are top 10. But I just absolutely love what Chase Brown is doing at the running back position for the Illini. I lean Illinois here, but the over-under is the more entertaining aspect here, 36.5.
Yeah, you got to like the under. I think I'm looking for something like a 10-9 game here. And I got to tell you, if you play this game on paper, this is much like Florida State, Wake Forest last week. If you play the game on paper, Florida State wins, but there's just something in my gut that says Iowa plus the points. This is a proud Iowa team, and they're on the road. It's low scoring defensive struggle. I got to take the points with Iowa, and it wouldn't surprise me if they come out of here the winner. Coach Ferentz just always just gets the best out of his team. So I'm going to go with Iowa plus the points there to pull the outright upset.
Brown bringing 6 straight 100-yard rushing performances into this one. Leads the nation in 10 or more yards, 25 of those this year. Second in yards after contact, 423. Fifth in forced missed tackles, 32. The dude has been spectacular to this point. So I'd like to see him run past Iowa. That'd be pretty good. Phil, your top 3 plays of the week heading into week 6 are what?
And you talked about with Stephen and Wayne, I usually come up with an off the board MAC game. And in that one, I went with Miami of Ohio against Kent State. We're going to use that one here as well. And when you look at Miami, throw away their non-conference every year. Chuck Martin doesn't care about non-conference games. He cares about MAC games. They're 20-5, their last 25 MAC games. Last week, they went into Buffalo where the home team dominates. And they led. They were up by 3 points late. Buffalo had a field goal with penalty, and they went down, scored a touchdown, and beat them by 4 in the final seconds. But Miami outgained them, out-first downed them, played well in that game. Now they're back at home. Backs to the wall. You lose this game to Kent State, you're done. Your MAC East title hopes are done. You're 3 games behind Kent State, which would be 2-0 with the tiebreaker. You'd be 0-2. So it's a must-win. Last year when these two played, Miami went into Kent State at 2-point conversion in overtime. They went for it, just came up short. Kent went to the MAC title game and not Miami, so it's legitimate revenge. I'm taking Miami +6 at home in this one as a play. I earlier talked about Utah against UCLA. I do like Utah minus the 3.5. That'll be the second official play. And let's bounce back to the MAC. We got to get these top 3 plays doing better than what they've done last week. I'm going to go with Buffalo minus the points over Bowling Green. When you look at Bowling Green this year, they have been playing well against the spread, but Buffalo's also impressed me. They had one bad game where they lost to Holy Cross. Other than that, they're a perfect 4-0 against the spread. Gave Coastal Carolina a game, blew out Eastern Michigan on the road, beat a very good Miami team that never loses MAC games at home last week. I feel they're capable of going on the road and getting the win. And once again, you're laying less than a field goal. I like Buffalo minus the 2 over Bowling Green. So Miami of Ohio +6, Utah minus 3.5, and Buffalo minus 2.
And you hit last week with Louisiana +9 against South Alabama. So those are Phil's top 3. Let's see. I've given you a couple of them. I'm going with Notre Dame covering the 3.5 at Allegiant Stadium over BYU. I also like Auburn covering that 30 at Georgia between the hedges. And then give me LSU and Tennessee, the under 65. The under. Now, Jaden Daniels held a players-only meeting on Monday to bring that passing game together after only 85 passing yards the previous week and overcoming a 17-0 deficit against Auburn. They only had 5 in the second half. So I think they're going to be able to throw the ball a little bit, but I'm more steadfast on the defensive effort of Tennessee, highly ranked, coming into their house, 11 a.m. local kick, and I think they're going to be pinning their ears back and able to slow down Hendon Hooker, who has now entered the Heisman chat. So I think there's going to be a lot to prove defensively for LSU, which those numbers, the over-under, have gone under in 4 of the last 5 for LSU in those Tigers ball games. So those are my 3. Under 65, LSU and Tennessee. Auburn covering the 30 at Georgia. And then for the third one, Notre Dame covering the 3.5 against BYU. Trip, tee me up, man.
Yeah, so the teaser, apologies, it missed again last week by 1 game. I mean, Kentucky, Ole Miss, I teased the total down to 48, and they can't hit it. They come in at 41. As soon as I start building up Will Levis, look what he does to me. But anyways, we've got another one this week. This is a 7-point teaser. I haven't put it in yet, but as of an hour ago, you could still get this. Arkansas, I'm getting +16.5 on the road at Mississippi State. I'm going to go over with Auburn and Georgia. We've got that teased down to 42. ECU Tulane, I'm going over 48. And Wisconsin Northwestern, just a no-brainer under 51. That's impossible for that to go over.
Very good, very good. So Phil's top 3 again: Miami +6 versus Kent State, Utah -3.5 against UCLA, and Buffalo -2 against Bowling Green. I've got your under 65, LSU, Tennessee, Auburn +30 at Georgia, Notre Dame +3.5 against BYU. I did give you Kentucky +7 at Ole Miss a week ago. Tripp's giving you the teaser. Our Sickos pick, 4-1 for the year. I will take the Liberties again. UConn, a 4-point favorite. The Huskies are favored by 4 over an FBS opponent. They're on the road at FIU. Both teams coming off of wins. Miraculously, 7 o'clock ESPN 3 after FIU hit covering the 2-touchdown spread a week ago. I'm going to go the other way with UConn. Give me the Huskies and Jim Mora Jr., 7 o'clock. They cover the 4. They'll win probably by at least a touchdown. So we'll see if the Sickos can move to 5-1. Phil, anything else? It's been fun. Phil Steele Plus, Inside the Press Box, online, philsteele.com. Of course, if you haven't already, get yourself a magazine. It's available in the digital version as well at philsteele.com. And Phil, one of our lucky viewers and listeners will be able to interact with us at CS Now Tweets. We've had plenty of people over the first 6 weeks now, counting week 0, who are trying to get in the running for a free subscription of Phil Steele Plus, $99 value. Feel free. Continue, okay? Do not be afraid. Do not be shy. Leave us a review as well. I know Phil loves those, right?
That's
it helps
right.
you sleep at night.
Absolutely. And by the way, tomorrow morning on philsteele.com, I put up the Phil Steele Plus tour with selections. You get 6 free college selections, and then you get 5 quick hitters. The free college selections are on a 13-7 run, as are the quick hitters right now over the last 4 weeks. So make sure you check it out. It's absolutely free at philsteele.com.
He's Phil Steele on Twitter at PhilSteele042. Thank you for watching at CS Now Tweets. That's Trip Hurd. I'm Kyle Schasberger at Kyle Schas at Trip Hurd. Gamble, Tease, and Lean. GTL. It's the new GTL, folks. Every Thursday live at 1 Eastern on CS Now Tweets. Catch us next weekend of Week 7 on the Phil Steele Show.